My name's Rick Sheffer. I grew up in Emlenton during the 1950s and 60s. I love this town, for my family's history is part of it for over the past 100 years. On my recent visit to Emlenton, I spent quite a bit of time driving through the streets of town, reminiscing about how comforting my life was growing up in Emlenton. The town was full of life, the refinery was going strong, and employment was steady. When I drove through the business district, for a moment I didn't see the buildings as they stand today, but rather as the street looked in the 1950s and 60s. I saw where Ray Cooper's hot dog shop stood, where I washed dishes one summer. I saw the hometown bakery in full bloom as I loaded all sorts of baked goods into the truck for that day's delivery. And I saw Morrison's Quaker State gas station where I used to hang out. I saw Dick Creer's sporting goods store, the Farmers Bank, Crawford's Five and Dime store, and the two-lane bowling alley located below the Five and Dime store where I periodically sat pins on Friday and Saturday nights. Finally, I smiled as I looked on to where Merritt Sloan had his supermarket. Well, not exactly a supermarket, but I played a kid's prank on Merritt by filling a Baraxo can I found in my grandfather's dump with white sand from the railroad tracks and placed it back on Merritt's shelf with the rest of the Baraxo. Years later, when I told Merritt what I had done, he laughed. You see, my Aunt Hazel brought that can back to the store and complained that Granddad said this stuff won't lather up or nothing. The irony was that Granddad bought the can that I had placed on the store's shelf. I would like to start my presentation with a bit of history about the town and then talk about potential ideas for its future. Emlenton, Pennsylvania is a rural town of perhaps 600 inhabitants, located in northwestern Pennsylvania, nestled along the Allegheny River. The town was founded around 1830. It grew first with the timber that was cut and floated down the river in support of the growth of the great city of Pittsburgh. Then the little burg of Emlenton began to grow, one building and one business at a time. Around the same time, deposits of iron ore were discovered in the nearby hills, and an iron industry sprang up in the hills and valleys of Venango and Clarion counties. Here stone furnaces, 50, 60 feet tall, were constructed next to a steep hill. Timber was cut to make charcoal. Ore and limestone would be dumped down the throat of the furnace where hot charcoal fire burned. A bellows operated by a water wheel in a nearby stream stoked the fire to a temperature hot enough to melt the iron ore. However, the iron industry died out in the mid-1800s, quickly to be replaced by the discovery of oil in the region, which began the Second American Gold Rush. This time, however, it wasn't yellow gold of California fame, but black gold of petroleum oil fame. Soon the entire region was covered by oil rigs, with their pumping jacks dancing up and down, bringing up oil from beneath the ground. The discovery of oil bred new businesses throughout the region, including barrel and oil tank makers, pipelines, tool shops, and crude refineries that were required to convert the oil into kerosene and other distillates. With industry came progress, and the town of Emlenton continued to grow. In the 1890s, an independent oil refinery was formed in Emlenton, which eventually evolved into the Emlenton Quaker State Oil Refinery. The town's prosperity expanded with the growth and success of the Quaker State motor oil brand. But oil was not the only regional industry. Coal was being strip mined from the surrounding hills, and glass plants sprung up in the area, converting sand into glass bottles. These industries also provided good-paying jobs. In the winter, the Allegheny River froze over, followed by the springtime thaw and the flood that often bridged the riverbank, flooding the streets and homes on Water Street. This ritual continued until the Kinzua Dam was built in the 1960s, that forever claimed control of this mighty stream.
Emlenton's downtown district was small but self-contained. In the 1960s, it seemed like most business came in twos. There were 2 grocery stores, 2 banks, 2 restaurants, 2 country dentists, 2 hardware stores, 2 country doctors, 2 barber shops, 2 drug stores, 2 banks, 2 machine shops, 2 funeral parlors, 2 jewelry stores, 2 shoe repair shops, and 2 law firms and 2 bars. The single retail offerings included furniture store, children's clothing store, a community newspaper, a 5 and 10 cent store, a gas station, a sporting goods store, a candy store, an old hotel, a planing mill, bowling alley, feed store, post office, an optometrist's office, and a movie theater that operated until the mid-1950s. This was the time when a movie, single or double feature, cost a quarter, and before the main feature you watched previews of coming attraction, news of the day, and a cartoon. However, for such a small town, it also sported 4 automobile dealerships: Chevrolet dealership, Ford dealership, Pontiac dealership, and a Nash Rambler dealership. Every fall of the year, the car companies would introduce their new models, which every 2 years featured completely new body styles. It was part of the culture of the times to stroll down to the dealerships to view the new models. They always served coffee, cookies, and pop for the kids, and the new models became the talk of the town. A general sense of prosperity existed, that is, until the 1970s, when 2 structural changes began to occur that altered the economics of the region to this day. First, retail chain stores began to build superstores in the larger nearby communities, which began to drain the lifeblood from the local businesses. At the same time, local industries that fed the region began to falter. First, the corporate headquarters of our local oil companies, whose brands became famous worldwide, moved out of the area and off to the oil fields of Texas. These local oil companies included Quaker State, Pennzoil, and Wolf's Head. Not long after their corporate headquarters departed, the local Quaker State refinery closed down in Emlenton. On top of this, environmental regulations made western Pennsylvania coal unprofitable to mine, and the local glass companies ceased to remain viable. The result was the rapid decline in employment opportunities which occurred, and downtown retail stores began to wither as customers fled to the large parking lots of the big box stores in Seneca to shop. Also in the 1960s, Interstate 80 was constructed, bypassing the town. Road traffic that formerly passed through the town now flew over and around the town's retail district. Deer hunters who used to flood the streets and sporting goods store and restaurants of town whizzed by at lightning speed. Today, Emlenton is a quiet, small town still nestled in the foothills of western Pennsylvania, still crouched in the arms of the Allegheny River. The downtown stores are sparse, yet the buildings remain a level of architectural character to be admired. One would say the Main Street buildings have good bones, bones that with some attention could bring back their fading character. When one examines the current assets of the community, a number of positive images emerge. Emlenton today supports over 600 people, a median household income of $30,227, and a per capita income of $16,952. There are no major industries left in town, and the one remaining manufacturer announced plans this year to close down their Emlenton operation. Retail businesses include 2 banks, a lumber business, pharmacy, a custom embroidery company, restaurant, a bar, supermarket, a Dollar General, and several other small retail establishments. The people of Emlenton are gracious, with a strong sense of community. The town supports Emlenton Days in the summer, where the entire area shows up for food, street vendors, games, and fireworks. The Emlenton Volunteer Fire Company is an extremely strong organization, supporting some of the finest up-to-date firefighting equipment of any town their size in the country. The Civic Club supports the town through community events, and the ruling body of the town is the Town Council. Pride runs deep in this small Allegheny River town, where the people are engaged in the building a high quality of life for the people of the community, where friendships extend throughout the town and into the surrounding areas. Emlenton is a great place to live, still supporting strong community assets that can be more leveraged for the good of the town. Here are some of her assets. Emlenton is located along the beautiful Allegheny River in northwestern Pennsylvania and in the southeastern corner of Venango County. Emlenton is a recreational and sportsman destination with small-town America charm and history. Interstate 80 passes over the town on one of the highest bridges on the interstate. The town has two exits off the interstate, each on separate sides of the Allegheny River. Northwestern Pennsylvania has a number of tourist attractions that visitors could be enticed to further their travels to the town. These attractions include Cook's Forest, Clarion College, the Titusville Oil Museum, and Grove City has the college by its name and sports a huge outlet mall that attracts shoppers from as far away as Pittsburgh and Erie. The town of Foxburg is just 7 miles south of town, and over the past few years has become a destination location for weekend visitors. Emlenton could easily draw from these travelers if suitable attractions exist. The Allegheny River provides both scenic beauty and excellent fishing. The water is clean and teeming with game fish such as bass, steelhead, and muskies. The River Avenue public boat launch and the river access to the Allegheny River is one of the only few public accesses to the river in the region. Many outfitters begin or end their river trips here. The river also provides plenty of recreational opportunities for residents and visitors, including boating, kayaking, and canoeing. The community currently offers canoe rentals and portage services for river excursions. You can also rent a Segway and tour the sights of the town. The newly paved hiking and bike trail that follows the Allegheny River some 20 miles north through the cities of Franklin and Oil City offer the most picturesque bike riding and nature could ever provide. In addition, the bike path travels through two abandoned railroad tunnels that reminds one of the great days of rail travel. Cycle enthusiasts could enjoy miles of heaven as they follow the meandering river northward towards Franklin. The Gaslight Campground, a mile south of Emlenton, provides campers with accommodations to operate from as they enjoy the opportunities of the area. The Whitehall Camp Conference Center of the Church of God brings visitors to the area for their summer retreats. Emlenton played a significant role in the early Pennsylvania oil industry, having housed a major Quaker State oil refinery for over 70 years. The Pumping Jack Museum and Emlenton Visitors Orientation Center, located in the Emlenton Crawford Center on Hill Street, depicts the region's oil industry with descriptive displays. The center features a large auditorium, perfect for community entertainment venues such as plays and musical presentations. The new Reminiscence Banquet Hall provides elegant accommodations for weddings, class reunions, and other special occasions. The current businesses in the community, supported by city government, can provide the business framework from which to build upon. Question: what can the community do to capitalize more on its inherent assets? Foxburg, which was a very tired town just a few years ago, has been revitalized by the injection of millions of dollars from one individual. Today it supports a motel, restaurant, wine tasting store, and several other retail shops. It has become a destination community, especially for regional weddings. They also attract visitors from around the country seeking such a scenic venue. Any visitor to Foxburg could be visitors to Emlenton. Emlenton's downtown area has much to offer in classic small-town America sense. It has great bones to work with. By focusing on restoring the existing storefronts, the town would take on a new persona from which to build. This process could be done one building at a time over a few years, and a transformation would appear. Foxburg is a great example of this. Some of the storefronts still exist exactly as they did when they were built. These structures just need some restoration done on the woodwork and classic, interesting paint treatments. Storefronts where the original architecture has been covered over can also be brought back to its original look. The buildings have very good bones, as some of the existing strong representation of the town, such as the Farmers National Bank building and the old H&E Hardware building and the old First National Bank building now housing the Hickman Lumber Company. The Allabaugh House is classic architecture in perfection. The Presbyterian Church is classic architecture of its time. And buildings that have had some alterations done could be brought back to their original look. This would include the old Sloan Drug Store building, or the Civic Club, which really doesn't need a whole lot of work. The owner of Amazing Stitches has done a great job of restoration on the portion of the building that she currently uses, and not much would be needed to the adjacent structures. The Progress News building is a noble structure of its original design, and the existence of a local newspaper would be a tremendous asset to a renovation effort. The new portion of the Farmers National Bank building, while more modern in look, is quite compatible with the original town architecture. And the old Reformed Church is another classic structure that could be turned into a neat eating or drinking place, or maybe a brew pub. Of course, the Crawford Memorial School building is beautiful in its architecture and soundness and structure. The old Miles Lynn Law building is stately in its own right. And the old Emlenton Mill has been transformed into a quaint restaurant. Even the old Beals Garage has strong classic bones. And the Morrison service station still has potential to be brought back to a classic gas station even without dispensing fuel. This gas station in Cassopolis, Michigan is a good example of this type of renovation. It is not used as a gas station, but is an interesting display windows of the time. And what if the old Emlenton Theater had a movie marquee reattached and modest changes done to its entry area, and the adjacent drugstore would need very little renovation, maybe just a cleanup. For that matter, the Donaldson Motors building on Water Street just needs a coat of paint to bring it back to the 1960 look. This building on Main Street could also be reconditioned to provide interesting retail space. Indeed, the buildings in Emlenton have great character that, with sensitive renovation treatment, could change the entire character of the downtown area. Here's an example of a town that has done this very thing. In 1987, Dowagiac, Michigan was rated by the state as among the worst downtown areas in the state of Michigan. 60% of the downtown businesses were boarded up and abandoned. The revitalization of the community was started in 1995 by one man with determination and a vision of what could be. His name was Fred Matthews, the local optometrist. This individual presented his vision to the town council and insisted that if they wanted to embark on such an endeavor, he needed to be appointed chairman of the newly appointed Downtown Development Authority to be comprised of like-minded community people. He would lead the group through the process. The council liked the idea, appointed the members of the new developed Downtown Development Authority, and appointed this individual as chairman, and the process began. The first effort was to focus on the storefronts of the downtown businesses. There was one individual in the community who was a painter with a very sensitive color palette who was included as a member of the Downtown Development Authority. He played a major role in helping to define restorable architectural features and color schemes. One of the overall goals of the group was also to bring renters into the downtown by rehabilitating apartment space that lay fallow above the storefront. They recruited a local architect to provide building consulting services at an extremely reasonable cost. In their case, the architect agreed to provide a storefront evaluation and schematic recommendation for only $75 per storefront. The authority developed a presentation on their vision and presented it to the town council for their approval, which was obtained. The authority garnered from the community donations of $75,000 in seed money to start the storefront redevelopment process. Next, the members of the authority went after grant money, state and federal money, wherever they could get it. They worked to set up a tax incremental finance authority, TIFA, through the state government. Briefly, this involved defining the deterioration zone of the community that would be included in their finance authority. They then made the necessary application to the state. What a TIFA does, it locks in the tax revenue that the designated zone currently generates for use by the current city government. However, all income tax that grows from the improvements done by the TIFA are then exclusively used by the authority to do other improvements in the zone. For instance, say the city currently collects $150,000 a year in taxes from the designated area. The city government would be locked in at this level of tax revenue. If the tax base rises to $170,000 over the next 5 years, then the authority receives the additional $20,000 for zone improvements. With this money, they set up a program to assist downtown building owners to rehabilitate their storefronts. Their assistance came in both design, construction advice, and seed money. In Dowajek's case, they gave $15,000 in support for each surface that was restored. For a building located in the middle of a block, the store owner would be awarded $1,500. If the building was located on a street corner, the owner would receive $3,000 for 2 surfaces. A standalone building would get $4,500 for 3 surfaces. However, it was up to the store owners to carry the finances through to restore their building storefront to schematic design as well as interior to their specifications. The city government agreed to do all the below-ground work involved in reworking the streetscapes. This included a reconstruction work from storefront to storefront, tearing out the sidewalks, replacing the sewers, and putting electrical and telephone wires underground. New sidewalks were laid in a combination of concrete and brick, and the street resurfaced with handicapped accesses. The authority then brought all the downtown building owners to a meeting and presented the overall development plan along with financial and support services they were offering. The results were slow at first, but when the first building was started, the authority made a big fuss about the building owners' commitment to community improvement. The local paper would run stories on the building owners' plans as well as update articles on the progress as major accomplishments occurred. When the project was completed, the authority helped sponsor an open house to show off the building, and this was done for each new building that was redone. This brought some degree of pressure to other building owners as well as enthusiasm for the entire program. It took a number of years for all their storefronts to be renovated, and in several cases the city purchased certain properties, restored them, and sold the properties for individual reuse, sometimes at below their cost, period. The general community was encouraged to contribute through the purchase of bricks for the sidewalk. They sold each brick with the person's name on it for $50. Each brick cost the authority $10, and they raised $20,000 through this process. The authority agreed to fund the above-ground development, which including setting old-time street lights and planting trees along the main section of the downtown and adding benches and green areas as defined in the master plan. Individuals donated the money for each individual street light, and each one had the donor's name attached. Another donor paid for a town clock that was mounted on the main street, and another donor paid for a small bandshell that was sited on a vacant lot, and it was garnished with bushes and plantings. Other patrons donated sculpture to enhance the streetscape. Other areas of funds Dowagiac obtained, including $800,000 from the state to relocate the main highway away from the downtown area, which relieved traffic pressure. The Michigan legislature, through their local representative, awarded $200,000 for this specific purpose. Interestingly, Emlenton does not need this type of change because of the Interstate 80 bypass that exists. The old gas station was restored with the original painting scheme and signs. Antique automobiles, trucks, and cars are placed inside and outside the building. Some funds were garnered from the Michigan Department of Transportation, MDOT, and Federal Railroad executives also agreed to restore the old train station and associated streetscape. In some cases, they sold general obligation bonds that were guaranteed by the city. As the renewed image of the town emerged, new retail investment occurred. An upscale restaurant opened in the town, and just this year, the city restored a two-story building and moved the local history museum from the local community college into the building. Today, every storefront in downtown Dowagiac has been restored. A very fine dining restaurant is located in the building that the city had purchased, restored, then sold. Quaint street lights and trees line the main street. Benches and green areas fill spaces where buildings once stood. And there are 18 beautiful large bronze sculptures located throughout the city, all donations by individuals and businesses. How could Emlenton do something similar? Well, of course it could. It could be done. It would all start with a vision of what could be, and the leadership willing to take it on. It would require organizing around the vision and the commitment to see it through. A plan would need to be developed, and obviously the resources necessary to make it happen would have to be found. I would like to end this presentation with a vision statement, not intended to be the vision for the town, but rather as food for thought for this endeavor. What if the town leadership set a new vision that foretold of a renaissance for the entire community? A vision that included a main street where the buildings were restored to their original character, with retail stores that attracted summer visitors to the region, where the streets featured quaint street lights, trees, and green areas, where the town projects a quaint, friendly place to stop and enjoy food and a unique shopping experience. Perhaps an attractive motel and restaurant have been built with a grand view of the river. Weekend wedding guests stay at the motel and enjoy the festivities at the wedding hall just north of town. Retail stores, including such attractions as currently exist, plus such retail options that encourage wine tastings, ice cream treats, antiques, clothing, specialty food, and a variety of restaurant choices. Visitors enjoy river canoe and kayak adventures, and hikers and cyclists rendezvous for a 10 or 20-mile hike or bike ride up the Allegheny River. Frequent summer events take place on the streets of town, encouraging tourists to visit. Motorcycle clubs are encouraged to include the town in their biking trips. In the winter, snowmobilers come from miles around to enjoy possible miles of trails available to them. Could this be possible? Of course it could. And if something like this were to begin, I personally would love to be a part of it. And thank you for your kind attention to my thoughts.